Right, so today we're talking about driving in the snow, what you need, what you don't need, what you need as far as chains goes, and visiting our beautiful Alpine areas. I pulled up here at Kiandra, it's -4, it's nice and fresh. The road's been pretty good, but that said, I've been up here recently when conditions have been really bad. I was in the unfortunate situation where I was directly in front of a vehicle that subsequently rolled immediately behind us. So we were the first responders for that vehicle. I saw it happening as it disappeared over the edge. My mate that was driving said, oh, they've lost it. He was watching them in the rear vision mirror and turned around, and as they went over the embankment, they then rolled. They were driving relatively slowly. The road was completely covered in snow and ice. It was very slippery, even underfoot. You've got to give lots of space, you've got to be really cautious. And it's really important to note, they were in a four-wheel drive, but they didn't have chains on, and I would say if they had chains on, they would not have slipped off the road. They were very lucky, a few minor scratches and a little bit shaken up, but otherwise they were okay. That brings me to the discussion about chains. In Victoria, all vehicles are carrying chains, even four-wheel drives, so no negotiations as far as that goes. In New South Wales, if you are two-wheel drive, you need to carry chains. It doesn't mean you need to be having them on the whole time. It does mean that you need to have them there in case you need to fit them should the conditions be the case. Now, in New South Wales, as far as four-wheel drives go, there are some circumstances, like what happened to me the other week, that a set of chains might be the only thing that'll stop you from sliding off the road. If conditions are really bad, then chains work on all vehicles and they provide grip in snow and ice. On a day like today, where the roads are perfectly clear, you don't need your chains on. In actual fact, it could cause damage to your vehicle if you do have your chains on, so you're better off without them on for the occasional patch of snow and ice. But on a really bad day, they may be the thing that allow you to get you and your family home. For us, our closest town that hires out snow chains is Talbingo. You've then got places like Adaminaby and Jindabyne that hire out chains. So if you need them, you can hire them. Tips for driving in the snow. Slow down is probably the biggest one, and really the easiest to do. We've got a pretty good road today. It's nice and clear. It's 11 o'clock, the sun's been on it, but there's still, I can see in this shadow just here, I'm about to hit a patch of snow and ice that's right there. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to have your chains on the whole time while you're here. So if you're in a vehicle and you've got your chains on and the road is clear and dry, you're going to be generating a lot of heat. You potentially are going to damage your tyres, and that means also you may potentially damage your vehicle. So you really only need to fit chains when directed to, or when there is a full cover of snow and ice on the road or the hill. When it's clear like this, you don't need any chains on. Some of the other spots in Australia and some of the other roads into the other ski resorts aren't as clear as what this one is, which we're just here up Mount Selwyn. And look, see, another shadow, another patch of snow and ice. And that's the snowplow's been through here today. So the reality is this road should be relatively clear, and it is, but we're still dealing with patches of snow and ice. You can see somebody's driven off in a big four-wheel drive to the side. I wouldn't normally recommend just driving off wherever. It might look like it's nice and grassy, but if you don't know what is under there, you might be driving off over a culvert, you might be driving off over a soak, and you'll very quickly find yourself stuck. So again, pulling over to the side of the road in some spots is just as dangerous as anything else. Some of these chain bays and some of those spots are a far better place to pull over than just on the middle of the Snowy Mountains highway. Some of the essentials that I think you should always put into your vehicle while you're travelling through these alpine areas. I've got one on, warm coat. Even if you don't plan on stopping, if something happens and somebody else, or you're stuck behind traffic or there's a crash, having a warm coat in your car for every person is really important. It doesn't have to be a really fancy down jacket or anything like that, but having some warm clothing is essential. That also means probably something for your head, like a beanie. Set of gloves. If I'm coming up into these areas, I do prefer to have a set of waterproof gloves with me, set of ski gloves, something like that. If you've got to get out and work with your hands, helping with a vehicle, fitting chains, stuff like that, some gloves are really handy to be able to do that with. The obvious, like some water. You know, we need water to live. You're surrounded by water in its frozen state, but it's really hard to drink it. So, you know, really, just have a bottle of water in the car. Having some food or some snacks is not a bad idea either. If you're delayed because of other vehicles or even yourself, then having some water and some food is a really good move. I've also got a waterproof jacket. That's an old habit of mine. If you've got a warm coat, then it might be that your coat and your waterproof jacket do the same job. For me, they're two separate items. I've got both with me today. Now, some of these areas, like the Snowy Mountains Highway, you are able to travel through at night. That does elevate the risk of something happening or to either yourself or you coming across something else. So, in my opinion, tossing in a sleeping bag and a headlamp into your vehicle if you are having to travel through these alpine regions overnight is a really sensible idea. So something I need to touch on as well is fuel. The distances between some of these towns, and it's not only the distance but the potential travel time in a vehicle if you're in bad conditions could be quite high. So you know, you've got 100 kilometres between Talbingo and Adaminaby or thereabouts. I'm not sure off the top of my head what it is. And there's no fuel. So you've got to cover that distance, but also you need to be aware that that distance might take you 2 hours or more in bad conditions. Could take you 3. So you need to make sure that you've got enough fuel for 3 hours. If you are planning on camping overnight in some of these alpine regions and you have a diesel vehicle, is don't fill your tank up in Sydney and drive all the way down here. You do actually need to fill up locally to the alpine regions. The reason for that is over the winter they run a slightly different mix in the diesel. It's called Alpine diesel. It has an additive that stops the diesel from going waxy and solidifying in the tank. You know, and that is really important on a -6 or a -8 degree morning because you need to be able to start your vehicle after you've been camping. So filling up local to the resorts is a good idea if you're going to be spending an overnight in these really cold areas. Something else that's really important to bring up is if you do become stuck or you decide to park your vehicle somewhere in the snow overnight, is leaving the engine running. It has caused many a fatality by getting carbon monoxide back into the cab. Now, whether that comes through your heating system or whether that comes from the exhaust feeding back through your seals as everything starts to block up with snow, I don't know. I don't understand how that quite works, but what I do know is it's a big no-no. It happens a lot overseas. It happens occasionally here in Australia. It mostly doesn't happen here very often because people aren't sleeping in their cars in the snow. But if you do need to, do not leave the engine running or you could die. Is that plain enough? I suppose it is.